Hi friends, welcome back to my channel. Today, in this short video, I'll try working with a pretty good strategy that I've found and tested. I'll be using just 3 indicators. I can work on any chart with this strategy. Plus, I'll try to make some money during this video. So, I start by setting up my workspace, and I'll begin by adding indicators. Today, I will use 3 indicators. The first indicator I will use is the SuperTrend. I add it to the chart, go here to Settings, and I will use a period of 9, so I set 9 here. And I set the second parameter to 2.2, after which I click the Save button. I don't change anything in styles. Then I move on to adding the second indicator. The second indicator I will use today is called ADX. I add it to the chart, go to Settings, and change the first parameter to 12, and I also change the second parameter to 12. After that, I go to Styles and will only use the main line of the ADX indicator, which is located at the top. I turn off the other 2 lines. After that, I press the Save button, and the last indicator I will need today in my work is called SAR. I add it to the chart. Now I go to the settings of this indicator, and here I use the standard settings. So in the first field, I enter 0.02, and in the second field, I enter the value 0.2. And here I switch to style and change this indicator a bit, making it more noticeable so that it's a bit more convenient for me to work with. Alright, I've configured all the necessary indicators. Now, in order to receive signals for opening 1-minute trades, I need to set up the chart itself. This is also a pretty important part of my work because if I set the wrong settings here, I will receive non-optimal signals for entering a trade. What settings do I use for the chart? I set the chart type to candlestick and set the candle time frame to 15 seconds. After that, my workspace is ready and I can start working. So, before I start explaining how I work with this strategy, I remind you that in the pinned comment I will leave a link to this platform where I work. And by the way, this platform has a demo account where you can practice absolutely for free without investments and see if this strategy works for you. So, now I'm getting back to the strategy itself. So, how do I work with it? First, I look at an indicator called ADX. Basically, this indicator shows the strength of the current movement. It doesn't matter at all where this movement is heading. It can either be an uptrend or it can also be a downtrend. The most important thing I look at with this indicator is the strength of the current movement. For example, right now the price is going up and the ADX indicator shows the strength of this movement. In order for me to enter trades on this chart, it's important that the current value of the ADX indicator, roughly the point where the chart is right now, for this point to be above the value of 20. And if I see that the ADX is above this value, then I can consider the current chart, which I have open right now, as suitable for entering trades on this chart. This is the first nuance. And the second nuance that I also pay attention to is that it is important for me that the ADX indicator line is either directed upwards or is at a plateau. So the main thing is that the ADX indicator doesn't drop down. Why? Simply because the situation on the chart can change. There might have been a quite long upward movement. The ADX indicator might have risen, for example, to a value of 40 or 50, and then a sharp downward movement will follow. And it seems that the ADX indicator will still show a value above 20, but its line will be directed downwards because it will now indicate that the previous upward movement is losing strength. So, just as the chart was rising, the ADX indicator was rising, and now a downward movement has already appeared. And the ADX indicator just shows that the previous upward movement is losing strength. And as soon as the chart, for example, recalibrates, if the downward movement continues, then at some point I will see that the ADX indicator has plateaued and it has again picked up the current movement and shows the strength of the current movement. Overall, I repeat once more that in order to enter a trade, 2 conditions must be met according to the ADX indicator. First, the ADX indicator should be above 20, and second, its line should be either directed upwards or flat. The second indicator I pay attention to is called SuperTrend, and here it's pretty straightforward. So if I see that the SuperTrend indicator is currently giving a buy signal, that is, for example, like now I see that there was a buy signal, and here the green line is going up. In this case, I enter up trades. If SuperTrend gives a sell signal and I see that the chart is currently near the red line, then I consider entering a down trade. And accordingly, there is such a nuance here that I can use, which slightly increases the win rate of my trades, which I also sometimes pay attention to. It's just better for me to consider this nuance as well. So, what did I notice? If, for example, the SuperTrend gives a buy signal, drawing this line, and at the moment of entering the trade, the line is not just on a plateau but directed at least slightly upwards, I notice that it slightly increases my win rate of closed trades. That's why sometimes I also look to see that the SuperTrend indicator not only, for example, gives a buy signal, but also that its line is slightly pointing upwards. If, accordingly, I see a sell signal, it is preferable that its line is not just red and flat, but also slightly tilted downwards. And the third indicator that I pay attention to is the SAR indicator. So if I see that the SAR indicator draws its points below the chart, then I consider the possibility of entering an uptrade. If I see that the SAR indicator is plotting dots above the chart, then I consider entering a down trade. And accordingly, for me to enter the trade, I need all three indicators to give suitable signals that I can use in my work. Well, that's the strategy. Now, I'll try to find a suitable chart where I could enter a trade. For example, what do I see here? The ADX indicator is just above 20 and it's not pointing down. So let me try to enter an up trade here for 1 minute. That is, somewhere around the value of 20 it seems. Yes, the ADX indicator is not pointing down. What do I see from the SuperTrend indicator? There has been a buy signal active for quite a while. And at the moment of entering the trade, the SuperTrend indicator line was slightly upward, so I entered the trade. Accordingly, the SAR indicator is also plotting dots below the graph, indicating that the current movement is upward. Well, that's why I entered the trade. Now, a few words about the amount I entered the trade with. I entered the trade with $300, and here I use one simple rule and one simple strategy for balanced distribution regardless of the strategy I use. So I try to open trades with an amount that does not exceed 1% of my balance. I currently have about $30,000 left in my account, so I'm opening this trade for $300. And apparently this trade will close in profit for me. I'll wait a few seconds. Yes, my trade is closing in profit, so I'm not changing anything. But if my trade suddenly closed at a loss, then I would open the next trade with a doubled amount. That is, if my trade closes at a loss, then for the next trade, I open it with a doubled amount. Because if the trade with doubling closes in profit, it allows me to recover the loss from the previous trade and earn a little extra. But since my trade closed in profit again, there is no point in doubling. By the way, what do I see here? Here I see a good opportunity to enter a down trade. Perhaps my trade will close at a loss now, because this is always, well, such a normal process. I take it absolutely adequately. I've already gotten used to the fact that regardless of the strategy I use, my trades also end in a loss. So I just take this into account in my work as a fact. Therefore, if suddenly this uptrade closes in the negative, I will show how the doubling strategy works. If the trade does not close in the negative but closes in the positive, then great, I just earn money. So what do I see on the chart? Now I'll also tell you a little about what I saw on the chart. The ADX indicator is well above the value of 20, indicating a very strong downward movement. At the same time, this downward movement is only gaining its strength. So the line is pointing upwards. Additionally, the SuperTrend indicator is giving a sell signal and its line is pointing downwards quite aggressively. Meanwhile, the SAR indicator is plotting its dots above the chart. Consequently, my second down trade also closes in profit. Well, that's the strategy, friends. I hope this strategy was interesting for you and maybe you discovered something new. If so, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to my channel. Here, I show various strategies that I use in my work. I also remind you that on my channel, everything I do is to show my personal experience. I do not give financial advice. With that, I say goodbye to you. I wish you good luck.